Welcome! This is a revision explainer specifically for you Cambridge O-Level sociology students. Today, we're going to tackle two really big topics. First up, we'll break down the feminist perspectives on the family, which is super important. And then, we'll dig into all the major changes that are shaping modern families today. My goal is to get you feeling really confident for your exams.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll start with feminism in the family, then look at what's called the dark side of family life. After that, we'll compare the different sociological perspectives, dive into changing demographics, check out marriage and divorce trends, and finally, pull it all together to explain why modern families are changing so much.
Okay, let's kick things off with feminism and the family. We really need to get a handle on the core concepts first. There are two key terms you absolutely have to know to understand the feminist argument.
So first up, what exactly is feminism? It's really important to get this right. Feminism isn't just one single idea. It's actually a whole sociological perspective and a political movement. But what ties it all together is this one central goal: to fight for equality between the sexes by challenging the social structures that cause inequality in the first place.
And that leads us to a massive concept for feminists: patriarchy. You'll hear this word a lot. It basically describes a system, whether it's the whole society or just one organization like the family, where men hold the power and women are in a secondary or subordinate position. Now, feminists are really clear on this. Patriarchy isn't natural. It's something society has built. And they argue the traditional family is one of the main places where this system of male dominance is taught and passed down from one generation to the next.
Now, like I said, feminism isn't just one thing. There are actually different types or strands of feminist thought. First, you've got liberal feminists. Think of them as wanting to change the system from the inside. They push for new laws and social reforms, things like equal pay acts, because they believe that's the way to get to gender equality. Then there are the Marxist feminists. They connect everything back to capitalism. For them, the family is basically a tool that serves the capitalist system by churning out new workers and taking care of the current ones, all for free. And finally, you have radical feminists. They see patriarchy itself as the main enemy, even bigger than capitalism. They argue that you can't just reform the system. You have to completely tear it down and rebuild it from scratch to get rid of male dominance for good.
All right, another huge area for feminist research is the domestic division of labor. It's a fancy term for a simple idea: who does what around the house. We're talking cooking, cleaning, childcare, you name it. And sociologists like Ann Oakley found something really interesting. Even when women go out to work and have jobs, they still end up doing most of the housework and childcare. This is what's known as the dual burden. And for feminists, it's a really clear example of how inequality plays out right inside our own homes.
So this leads us to a pretty heavy but crucial topic: the dark side of family life. You know, functionalists tend to paint this rosy picture of the family as a warm, safe, happy place. Well, feminists come along and say, hang on a minute. They force us to look at the negative stuff, the things that go on behind closed doors that often get ignored. And you can't have a complete picture of the family without it.
And at the heart of this dark side is the issue of domestic violence. This is a top concern for feminists, but it's really important we understand the sociological definition here. It's not just about physical violence. The term also covers all sorts of controlling behaviors, like controlling someone's money or using emotional manipulation. For feminists, this isn't random. They see it as an extreme but very real outcome of patriarchal power being exercised in the home.
So, this leads to a really tough but important question for sociologists. If this is happening, why is it so incredibly hard for people to report it, or even to just leave? Why do so many victims stay in these situations?
Well, the answer is it's really complicated. It's not just one single reason. There's often a deep-seated fear that if they speak up, the violence will actually get worse. Or they're terrified of losing their kids. Sometimes, and this is heartbreaking, people start to believe the abuse is normal, or that they somehow deserve it. They might feel like they can't change the abuser, or incredibly, they might still love them. All of these things create this powerful trap that's so hard to escape.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit to some direct exam prep. This is a classic question. Your textbook brings up the Marxist feminists Barrett and McIntosh, and they use this really interesting word to describe nuclear families: antisocial. So what on earth do they mean by that? Let's break it down.
The key thing to remember is they're not using antisocial in the way we normally do, like someone being rude or aggressive. No, in this sociological context, it means the nuclear family can be too inward-looking.
It's like it creates its own little bubble, focusing all its energy and resources on its own members, and in doing so, it cuts itself off from the wider community. It weakens those bonds we have with neighbors and society as a whole.
All right, part 2 of the exam question. We know what antisocial means now, but what makes this a specifically Marxist feminist idea? Not just liberal, not just radical, but Marxist. Where's that connection to capitalism?
Okay, here's the crucial link. The argument is that this antisocial, little family bubble is actually perfect for capitalism. Why? Because inside that bubble, women are doing all this unpaid work: cooking, cleaning, raising kids. This keeps the current workforce, mostly men historically, healthy and ready for work, and it produces the next generation of workers. And the best part for the capitalists, they don't have to pay a penny for any of it. That direct line between the family structure and the needs of the economy, that is pure Marxist feminist analysis right there.
All right, now that we've got a good grip on the feminist view, it's time to practice a really important exam skill: evaluation. In sociology, that doesn't just mean saying if something's good or bad. It means weighing it up against other theories, looking at its strengths and its weaknesses.
This table is a fantastic summary for your revision, so let's quickly run through it. Look at the functionalists. Their strength is that they do see that families can be a good thing, a positive experience, but their big weakness? They're accused of being way too idealistic, completely ignoring that dark side we just talked about. Then you've got the Marxists. They're great at showing how the family is connected to the economy. The downside, they can be a bit tunnel-visioned, focusing only on capitalism and class. And finally, the feminists. Their huge strength is shining a light on ignored issues like domestic violence. But a criticism often thrown at them is that they can be overly negative, and maybe they don't fully account for women who are genuinely happy in more traditional family setups.
Okay, let's pivot now. We've talked a lot about theory, but let's look at the real world. Let's dig into the numbers, the data that shows how the shape of the modern family is actually changing right before our eyes.
So, one of the biggest changes we're seeing is that birth rates are falling. Families are getting smaller. But why? Well, it's a mix of things. For one, kids have gone from being an economic benefit, another pair of hands to work the farm, to an economic cost. They're expensive. Plus, with better healthcare, fewer infants die, so people don't feel the need to have as many children. Of course, contraception is widely available. Religion, which often discourages contraception, has less influence. And here's a huge one. Women have way more opportunities for education and careers, which often means they delay having children or have fewer of them.
Now, think about this. If birth rates are going down, and at the same time people are living longer, what's the result? You get what sociologists call an aging population, and this creates a whole new set of challenges. We're seeing the rise of the so-called sandwich generation. That's people, often in their 40s or 50s, who are sandwiched between caring for their own kids and their aging parents. That's a huge amount of pressure. And it also raises big questions about how we care for the elderly and prevent them from becoming isolated.
All right, next up, let's talk about one of the biggest areas of change: marriage and divorce. The world of I do, and increasingly, I don't.
So why are divorce rates so much higher than they used to be? Sociologists have pinpointed 4 main reasons, and they all kind of feed into each other. First, the law changed. It's just plain easier and cheaper to get a divorce now. Second, our attitudes have changed. There's way less stigma about being divorced. Third, secularization again. Religion just doesn't have the same hold over people's personal decisions. And finally, and this one is a real game changer, women are more financially independent. They're not forced to stay in a bad marriage because they can't afford to leave.
Okay, let's wrap this up by taking a step back. We're going to look at the big picture and summarize all the major forces that are changing what the family looks like today.
So look, it's never just one thing. It's a mix of at least 6 big drivers all working together. You've got changes in the law. You've got our attitudes and values becoming more accepting of different lifestyles. You've got technology like the internet changing how we even meet people. There's secularization, which we've mentioned a few times. There's less pressure to have that one perfect type of family. And tying it all together, you have the massive shift in the status and power of women. You can almost say that's the engine driving a lot of these other changes. It's absolutely fundamental.
So, that leaves us with one final thing for you to think about. After everything we've looked at, all the theory, all the data, what do you think the family is going to look like in another 50 years? Are we going to see even more diversity? Or do you think there might be a swing back towards more traditional ideas? There's no single right answer, but it's exactly the kind of question top sociologists are debating right now, and it's a great one to chew on as you finish up your revision.